So today's video is kind of prompted by another one of Live Overflow's videos that I watched the other day. And it's kind of prompted by the fact that I know that I've gotten this question a lot. And it's also because I kind of have a unique answer to the question of how did I get my start? So that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to kind of be my weird and unique journey into getting to my weird and unique job. And hopefully along the way I can give a couple of pointers or you can learn a little bit from my experience. But at the very end, I'm going to give kind of like the TLDR, kind of a couple of hints how you can get here too, or kind of just some general life tips on how you can get into just about any industry. So my story kind of starts in high school. I went to a really small high school that didn't have a ton of language learning opportunities or tech learning opportunities. It was kind of like a fast track to the local community college. And, as such, I, was kind of limited in my high school career, my high school academic career. I didn't really have all that much opportunity to kind of set myself apart. I joined this class that was actually required. It was a typing class, actually, my sophomore year of high school. And it was kind of one of those courses that was completely unnecessary because everybody my age had learned how to type from a very young age. I actually had been playing video games for probably like a decade by then, and a lot of that was spent on the keyboard. So wasn't really like one of those necessary classes, but it was for some reason required to graduate. I sat down next to a guy who paid about as much attention to the material as I did. He kind of was just trying to skim through the class and get the easy A, and he didn't really pay much attention. So I sat down next to him, we started talking, and as class went on, I saw him using a terminal, but I didn't recognize it at the time. I was just kind of like a geeky gamer kid, but I had never done anything of that sort before. And I looked over and it was, black screen, green writing, like all kind of like the Matrix. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "Well, I'm writing an operating system." I was like, "Okay, you're like 16 and that's something that Microsoft does. I don't really know exactly what you mean." He said, "Well, I'm trying to study operating systems and I figured the best way to do that would be to write my own from scratch. So I'm writing this, and this." And he just kind of like went on this long rant about stuff that I didn't understand at all. But I thought it was kind of cool. I was like, okay, you're writing like an operating system. That kind of seems like a big deal. And I was like, "Well, teach me something." I was like, "I don't really know that we should start with teaching me how to write an operating system, but, teach me code." I barely knew what that meant at the time, but he said, "Okay, well, open up the notepad." And he wrote a couple of lines in the notepad, and he wrote a bash script that generated unlimited folders on my desktop that ended up crashing the school computer. It's like, that's actually kind of cool, but fix it. And he, ended up fixing it and taught me how it worked. He explained, this is how bash script works. This is what each line means. It's like, do you want to learn more of that? And I was like, yeah, that actually seems kind of cool. So he said, okay, go home and download a thing called Backtrack. Now, Backtrack is the, predecessor to Kali Linux. You were able to load it onto a bootable flash drive, which I had never done before, and, boot your laptop from it. That alone taught me a ton of different stuff. Like, oh, there are operating systems outside of the one that this guy's writing and Windows. That seems cool. And I was like, oh, there's like operating systems, that are meant for people who hack. I thought that was just for bad guys. That led to just endless rabbit holes after school where I would just go home and learn more about this kind of stuff. And then I would go to school, and during this 1 hour period, he would kind of walk me through, these are the different tools. I remember the first successful attack that I pulled off was crashing the school's Wi-Fi with ARP spoofing. That was a dumb idea. Do not do that at home. Please God, I could have gotten into a lot of trouble. But it kind of like sent me on my way to learning more about hacking and information security. And, by that time I was a sophomore, I needed to start thinking about college. Community college wasn't really an option for me. I just didn't really see much opportunity for me in that, especially after I learned that I wanted to do computer science. The community college that was kind of, in the area didn't have a great program and just wasn't really in the cards for me. So I knew which university I ended up wanting to go to, and I was starting to look at my university's website. I had already applied, already gotten in, all of that. I was, on the website just kind of browsing around looking for more information, and I saw that they had a Chinese program. Now, by then, I was pretty dead set on not doing anything language related. The only class that my school offered was Spanish, and the teacher was terrible, and the class was awful, and it just really wasn't actually geared towards making people fluent in Spanish. It was geared towards making people pass Spanish. I saw this advertisement on the university's website, and I was like, oh, that kind of looks cool. This, could be interesting. And I read up a little bit more about it. Essentially, it said you would start school the summer before your freshman year, and then the next summer you would go to China to study. I was like, that's perfect. I'm an angsty high school kid. I want to get out of my house as quickly as possible. And this is going to pay for, the first summer, so why not? And then I started looking into it, and I was like, oh man, it looks really prestigious. It looks like something that I can't, actually get into. And little did I know that was my first experience with imposter syndrome, something that would kind of haunt me for the last 5-6 years. I was looking at it and I said, the GPA requirements, I make them, but just barely. And it requires an essay that's really long, and I'm not a great writer. It just kind of looks like something that is geared more towards people who went to a better high school than I did. I was kind of dejected, but I applied anyways. I said, it's a rejection letter. It's not a big deal, just kind of like a cool thing that, might end up working out. It may have been 3 days later that I got the exception notice, and they said that, I had written one of the best papers that they had received for that year and that they really wanted me to join. I actually got the exception letter while I was working at that same Bible store. I went home to my parents, who did not even know that I applied for a Chinese language studies class. And I told them, and they were like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then I told them that it meant I would be going to college 3 or 4 months early, and that I would be going to China the next summer. And they were devastated. They basically, all they knew about my interest in language was that I wasn't interested in language. I had come home complaining about Spanish constantly. And, they just kind of were shocked. They were taken aback, and they didn't necessarily say, don't do it. They just kind of said that they thought that I should think about it more. I didn't. I accepted the exception pretty immediately, and that began my kind of Chinese journey. The first summer was brutal, but it was a huge learning experience. It was a required 8 to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week of language study, where you were not allowed to speak English from day one. You walked in, they told you the rules, and they said, it doesn't matter if you don't know how to say it. Ask how to say it in Chinese and we'll tell you. That was kind of the idea. That was pivotal. It was incredibly important because it was very immersive. It kind of threw me into the language very quickly. The next summer, I went to Shanghai, and talk about immersion. It was, contractually required that we don't speak any English aside from the 1 hour a day that we're allowed to talk to our parents. If we did speak English, we were kicked out of the country. We were required to leave by the program. And to people who are kind of doubtful of that, there was one guy who was caught and was sent back to the US for speaking English. It did happen. So that summer I learned a ton. I could do a completely separate video on just my summer in China, but I won't spend too much time on it other than to say it was incredibly immersive, but also the most stressful experience that I had ever had in my entire life. When I came back, I had kind of decided what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to take my 2 degrees and my 2 areas of focus and blend them somehow. And doing a normal coding or development job wasn't going to do that unless I moved to China to code or develop, which was not going to happen. So I started focusing more on kind of the Intel side. It said, well, I don't want a federal career because they don't pay anything at all. Then I realized that, the private industry has an Intel area. You have the capability to get an Intel job in the private industry that pays, 3 times more starting salary than, your typical federal job. So I started looking at that. I actually had gone to Shanghai the summer that OPM was hacked. I was actually only a couple of blocks away from the building that actually housed the hackers who stole the data from OPM. That was kind of my very, very close brush with what hacking could be and what information security meant on the global stage, that was kind of the moment that I decided, okay, there is an area for this. I started putting feelers out, started talking to people, and, I had already created a Twitter page that was meant to, kind of talk to other hackers. It was anonymous at the time, but shortly before the China trip, I'd actually gotten doxxed by some people who got pissed off at me for stuff that I did online. I just decided, okay, I'll own the docs and, make this my personal page. I started talking to people and networking, which I'm going to go ahead and be honest, networking is the most important part of this career. This industry period is just talking to people and having the capability of talking to people. And that's where I learned it. I learned it from hopping on Twitter and networking with complete strangers. I was talking to complete strangers and, was starting to talk about jobs. This was my junior year. There was one of the people that I started talking to. She did a thread where she had her like tens of thousands of followers list their competencies and reply to the thread, and she would try to hook them up with a company that they would work with. And I, listed out my language skills and my coding experience and the little bit of research that I had done. And she listed off I think probably half a dozen companies. That night, I filled out close to or over 40 job applications. I literally sat there with a pack of Monster next to me, my laptop open, and I filled out job applications until probably 2 o'clock in the morning. My idea for it was, okay, surely if I fill out this many applications, I'm going to get accepted. There's going to be a couple of invitations to interviews or something. Over the next couple of weeks, I received rejection letters from every last company I applied to. Easily over 40 different rejection letters after I filled out even more applications, after I started getting the rejection letters, and it was just, we're sorry, you're not qualified. It was absolutely devastating. That was one of the lower points of my professional life thus far. Was at the very beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, if I can't get my first job, how am I supposed to break it into the industry? I wasn't applying for senior positions. They were all junior. So after that point, I didn't really know what to do. I was kind of filling out more applications every day. I think by the end of it, it must have been 4 or 5 dozen applications that I sent in, until I finally got my first invitation to an interview. The interview went really well, and I did an exercise for the company, and then they invited me out to Dallas for an actual in-person interview. I accepted the job, and after I graduated, I moved to Dallas, and it was incredible. I was finally independent. I was making really, really good money, and I was doing pretty cool work. I was doing some awesome research for a company full of people that I really liked. And I was enjoying myself for a while. Then I started getting this nagging feeling of, this isn't for me. I was writing a lot of reports, and there was a lot of kind of syntactical stuff that I constantly had to go through. And there's just kind of this feeling that the work that I was doing wasn't important enough to me. And it just wasn't really what I wanted to do. Over time, this feeling got worse. It was just kind of this constant feeling in the back of my head as soon as I would wake up and get ready for work, where it was like, you're not doing what you need to be doing. And I don't really know what prompted it, but it got worse over time. And I started filling out more job applications. I started talking to people, and they said, you've only been with this company for a couple of months. You really don't want to get the reputation as a job hopper, but you also don't want to waste your time doing a job that you don't enjoy. So fill out applications, take a little bit of time, and find a job that you're going to stick with for a while. Because, you leave one job after a couple of months and it doesn't look great, but you're not a job hopper until you've done it 2 or 3 times. So they said, make sure the next job is one that you're going to stick with. So I took my time, and that wasn't really technically by choice. It was mainly because I kept getting rejection letters. It was rejection letter after rejection letter for all junior positions. And, that was another moment where I was like, holy cow, I can't get another job. Maybe this one was a fluke, or, maybe now I'm stuck in a job that I don't enjoy. And that actually compounded it. I was like, now I'm stuck. This isn't just a job I don't like. It's a job that I'm stuck in. And that was a pretty low point until I finally got an invitation to an interview. It took about 3 months for me to get through the full interview process, but by the end of it, I had gotten an awesome job with a slightly higher salary and one that I could work from home instead of have to move to Dallas for or stay in Dallas for. I was on cloud nine. Like, the people that I was going to be working with, the work that I was going to be doing, I was going to be using my language skills, which had dropped off since I had graduated college because I wasn't using them. I was like absolutely on cloud nine. I was so excited, and I'm still working with that company. It's like an awesome job surrounded by amazing people, and I'm doing incredibly important work that I'm really good at. And that kind of completely changed my like feeling about work in general. Now I'm doing like side gigs like YouTube, where I'm talking about stuff like this, to people and trying to help them also feel this feeling of like, financial independence and the ability to say that you're proud of your work and the ability to say that you're doing something that you love. It's an awesome feeling, and it's something that I want to like help other people do. The kind of high points that you need to take is, don't be afraid to take a weird route to get to a place that you don't know anything about. I took a really like big plunge, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I took a really big plunge when I signed up for that Chinese program. And I took a really big plunge when I signed up for computer science, not knowing jack crap about it. The way that I got to where I am right now could be considered very strange. Like, the dude learned a completely different language and went to a school that isn't like known for their computer science program. And now he's doing like all of this really cool work. Like, it is a weird kind of route to get there. Don't be afraid to take a weird route. Don't think you've got to like hack from the age of 4 and learn how to code by the age of 10 and then get like 15 different certifications and then go to a really prestigious college. Like, just not how it works. I didn't really even need to go to college. There are tons of people in this industry who didn't go. But the point of it is, if you're taking a weird route, don't feel discouraged by that. That's awesome. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to get to, where you want to be. But also don't have a laser focus of where you want to be. You don't know yet, and that's okay. I still don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. But have an open mind and take your weird journey in stride and kind of constantly evaluate the path that you're on and the path that you want to be on, and just keep making those changes. If you want to change jobs, even if it's only been a couple of months with your first job, do it. Just take the weird path that you need to take, and don't focus on the destination as much as you are making sure that you're doing what you want to do, what you think is impactful, what you think is important. And eventually you'll end up in a place that's even better than the place that you envisioned in the beginning. It's really important for people to recognize that you're not always going to know what you want to do, and you're not always going to be doing what you want to do, but you constantly need to know how to make the next step, even if it's on a really weird path. I'm going to kind of wrap the video up there. It's like 20 minutes long on the recording. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that about this video, leave them in the comment section below or hit me up on Twitter. I've also opened up a Discord, which is actually a much better place to talk about stuff like this. I'll leave the link to the Discord below as well, where we can chat about stuff like that. But, that and Patreon is also a great place to ask questions. At some point, I'm going to do a patron-only Q&A, where if you are a patron, which means you like donate $1 a month to me, you can ask questions, and I'll answer them on this Q&A, or I'll answer them on Patreon. So those are all great places to ask questions if you have anything to follow up from on this video. I know it was a lengthy one, but you guys take it easy. Thank you for all the support. It's been awesome, and have a good one.